10 spine-chilling babysitter tales exposed. Terrifying encounters that will haunt your nightmares. Eliza's heart raced as she stepped into the Johnson home. What had seemed like an easy babysitting gig was quickly turning into a nightmare. The Johnsons, an idyllic family in Maple Grove, seemed perfect. A smiling husband, a soothing wife, 2 sedately quiet children. Eliza's dreams of saving for college felt just within reach, but as night descended, a chill crept through her bones. The manicured lawns and neat picket fences, once a comfort, now felt like tombstones, mocking her sense of safety. As the door clicked shut behind her, a nervous energy pulsed in the air. The children Jenna and Lucas sat silently on the plush carpet. They watched, their eyes wide and unblinking, like 2 little owls anticipating a midnight dive. Eliza offered them coloring books and snacks, her forced smile stretching uncomfortably across her face. "How about some fun?" she encouraged, but the kids just stared, as if they held the mystery of the universe in their small, knowing gazes. With the sun slipping below the horizon, the atmosphere shifted. An uneasy stillness enveloped the home. Flickering lights overhead added to her growing dread, whispering secrets she couldn't quite grasp. "It's just nerves," she thought, willing herself to shake off the feeling. But the silence was heavy, almost alive. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Instantly, fear knotted in her stomach. She ignored the call, forcing herself back into the children's world of crayons and cookies, but her hands trembled as she shook the feeling away. A soft whisper echoed down the hallway, and her pulse quickened. It was just the wind, wasn't it? "Everything okay?" Eliza asked, but the children remained silent, their expressions unchanged, as if they were part of a twisted picture. Then, another call, this time accompanied by soft giggles, chilling and disembodied. Her heart pounded. Who was calling? She glanced nervously towards the children, but their eyes were fixed beyond her, as if they sensed something creeping just out of sight. Before she could catch her breath, her instincts kicked in. The air was colder, oppressive, and something was off. As she passed an area rug in the living room, she stumbled upon an edge, lifting it to reveal a staircase black and forbidding, hidden beneath an unassuming carpet. Curiosity fought with dread as she peered down into darkness. There was something down there. Something waiting. "Stay here," she commanded the kids, adrenaline pumping through her veins. As she ventured down, the world above her faded. The cold air wrapped around her like icy fingers. Shadows danced, playing tricks with her mind. Old toys lay strewn across the floor, broken dolls, cracked blocks, all remnants of children long gone. The walls emanated an energy, pulling her deeper into a haunting memory. Just as she turned to leave, her phone rang again. The same unknown number. This time, a low, guttural laughter echoed through the line, layered with faint, childlike voices calling her name. It cut off abruptly. Panic surged through her. She raced back upstairs. The atmosphere felt different, thicker, as if the house held its breath. Jenna and Lucas stood at the top, eerily still. Their eyes, wide with knowledge, darted toward the empty hallway. The clock struck midnight. Heart thundering in her chest, Eliza fumbled for the door, desperate to escape, to run. But as she drew closer, a dark figure appeared on the porch, silhouetted against the muted light. She could feel the weight of his gaze, laden with secrets. A twisted realization dawned on her. The Johnson family was not who they seemed. Terror wrapped around her, tightening its grip. Would she succumb to their nightmare, or could she outsmart the chilling fate that awaited her? The figure at the door shifted, a shadow stretched across the porch like a spider lurking in the corner. Eliza froze, her fingers trembling against the cool doorknob. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. "What do you want?" Forcing her voice to stay steady, she stepped back from the door just enough to take in the scene. The air felt electric, a crackling tension that warned her to stay still. The silhouette remained motionless, but she sensed its eyes boring holes into her, leeching her strength. She looked back at Jenna and Lucas, but they were now behind her, silent as statues, their expressions cold and unyielding. Why weren't they crying for help? The figure raised an arm slowly, and with a flick of its wrist, the door creaked open. It didn't push, didn't demand entry, but the very act sent shivers down her spine. "Come out to play," the voice hissed, smooth and sinister, almost musical but warped, like a slasher film soundtracked by a broken lullaby. Eliza's instincts screamed at her to run. She turned to the kids, their eyes narrowing, a flicker of something dangerous crossing their young faces. "Stay back!" she shouted, a primal fear seeping into her tone. A trickle of sweat slid down her back as she shifted on the spot, her brain racing through options, but it was clear the figure was no mere stranger. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging the hallway into darkness for a heart-stopping moment. When the lights returned, the figure had vanished, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Eliza felt bow rise in her throat. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, desperation clawing at her. "Playtime," Jenna murmured, her voice void of any excitement, almost robotic. Lucas nodded, his eyes wide but unblinking, as if he were entranced by an unseen force. "No," Eliza whispered, dread saturating her every thought. "You stay right here." But she felt the pull of the basement calling to her again, a siren drawing her closer to the depths of the unknown. "Mommy told us to wait for her," Lucas spoke suddenly, and that simple statement crashed into her. It was just about babysitting anymore. She was caught in something far beyond her understanding. The childhood innocence she once saw in them had twisted into something dark and wrong. Before she could grasp the full weight of his words, a soft giggle echoed from the depths of the hallway, teasing at her sanity. It felt tangible, wrapping around her, coaxing her toward the unknown. "Eliza," the voice sang out, coming from the children. They were no longer her charges, but vessels for an ancient presence that had seeped into the very walls of this house. "Don't listen!" she screamed, backing away toward the front door, her heart in her throat. But the door slammed shut with a resounding thud, trapping her inside. The kids began to giggle again, their laughter chilling, beckoning, and it broke her. With nowhere to go, she turned to face the silence beyond the hallway, the reality of what the figure had become. She had to know what was happening. Bracing herself, she took a shaky step toward the stairs leading back down into darkness. The voice echoed again, now a chorus of whispers demanding, pleading. "Join us," and just like that, the shadows of the staircase beckoned, a vortex of despair inviting her deeper into the chaos of her fate. What awaited her in that abyss? What horrors would she uncover below the surface of this hauntingly perfect abode? She took a breath, heart racing, and stepped down. The staircase creaked under Eliza's weight as she descended into the darkness. Each step felt like a betrayal of her better judgment, the wood groaning as if it shared her dread. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like winter wind, chilling her skin and chilling her soul. "Join us," they urged, seductive yet terrifying. The air thickened, suffocating her, urging her to turn back. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when that voice echoed through the hallways of her mind. She gripped the banister, her knuckles turning white as she felt the last remnants of light vanish behind her. With every moment, the basement drew her in like a spider waiting for a fly. At the bottom of the stairs, the world transformed into a murky twilight. Shadows loomed in the corners of the room, but it was the whispering that caught her attention, a cacophony of childlike voices, swirling with laughter tinged with malice. "Eliza, come play," it coaxed, blending the sweet innocence of childhood with something far more sinister. She could barely make out the shapes around her. Old clothes from previous tenants hung lifelessly on hooks like specters of bygone days. Dust sparkled in the minimal light filtering through a grimy window, but the panic buried deep within her made every corner feel alive with eyes watching, waiting. "Where are you?" she demanded, trying to mask her trembling voice with bravado. "Show yourselves." But the only response was the chilling laughter of the children, fading into echoes of melancholy. Suddenly, a figure formed in the shadows, a blurry silhouette against the darkness. Eliza squinted, anxiety clawing at her heart. "Lucas? Jenna?" she called out, but deep down, she knew. This wasn't them. The presence behind that shadow was not innocent, it was cunning, hungry. The figure edged closer, its features still indistinct. You should have listened, it hissed. The words slithered into her ears, igniting every survival instinct within her. She stepped back, instinctively retreating as a cold hand wrapped around her wrist, pulling her forward. Panic shot through her veins like ice. Why do you keep resisting? The voice asked, now smooth and dripping with a mix of affection and venom. There's no escape. We just want to play forever. Let me go! She screamed, eyes darting wildly, searching for a way free from this nightmare. But only laughter met her plea, echoing louder in the confines of the basement. The kids' giggles intertwined with the adult taunting, creating a discordant symphony that rattled her nerves. Desperation surged within her. She twisted her wrist free, but in that moment of rebellion, the presence shifted, and the shadows pulsed with new life. The walls seemed to close in, an oppressive weight pushing down on her chest as if the very house was alive, conspiring against her. No! Eliza shouted, adrenaline coursing through her body like a surge of electricity. She lunged for the staircase, ready to flee. But when she turned to run, the exit was gone. The staircase, once a gateway to safety, had morphed into a wall of darkness, sealing her fate. Playtime is just beginning, the voice sang, as her heart thundered in her chest, an uneasy rhythm of despair. Eliza's breath quickened. She was trapped in an unending nightmare, surrounded by innocent faces turned monstrous. What was happening? The line blurred between children and phantoms, and in that moment she realized, the true horror wasn't just the veil of darkness, but the truth hiding beneath the surface. Panic surged as she felt something shift behind her, the laughter pausing ominously. A shadow separated itself from the others, approaching with intent. In that instant, she knew she must make a choice: face the darkness or submit to it. As she braced herself for whatever would come next, the figure spoke again, clearer this time. Will you join us, or will you die trying to escape? And with that chilling question hanging in the air, Eliza's world began to spin out of control, shadows swirling dangerously close. What lay ahead in this dark abyss? Would she discover the secrets locked away, or become yet another lost soul in the house that never let go? The shadows shifted again, coalescing into more tangible forms. They edged closer, their small bodies illuminated by a flickering light emanating from nowhere. Eliza's heart pounded like a drum in a funeral march, each beat syncing with the laughter that twisted around her like a noose. Panic surged again as she spun to identify a route, a door, something. Yet all she met was the relentless tide of darkness pushing in from all sides. Join us, the chorus of voices grew louder, more insistent. She felt their breath on her skin, icy and teasing. With each echo of those words, the air thickened, pressing down on her shoulders like a lead weight. Please! Just let me go! Each plea felt more desperate than the last, turning her voice into a whimper. But their twisted laughter roared back, drowning her out, and she knew they could sense her fear. They thrived on it. Suddenly, a flicker caught her eye. A light, wavering like a candle flame in the fog. Hope surged through her veins, giving birth to courage she didn't know she had. Eliza darted toward it, moving through the thick shadows that seemed to claw at her throat, trying to yank her back. Each step was a struggle, each breath even more so. She stumbled forward and found herself in front of an old wooden door, warped by age but still intact. As she reached for the handle, the laughter, which had been a distant storm, erupted into a violent tempest of shrieks and yells. She can't leave! No one leaves! An electric jolt of terror surged through her spine. Grasping the handle, Eliza twisted and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. Her heart raced. She pounded on the door, shouting, "Help! Somebody, please!" But all she got in return was the eerie quiet that settled like a blanket over the ruckus. The silence scraped her nerves raw. Then, as if in response to her cries, she felt a cold breeze waft against her cheek. It carried with it a familiar, inviting scent, a fleeting aroma of her childhood, strawberry ice cream on a hot summer day. Stay with us, Eliza. The shadow figures blurred together, their innocence morphed into dreadful insistence. No, I want tea! She shouted, her voice now rising in defiance. She could feel the heat from the light behind the door growing stronger, mixing with her determination. Desperately, she pressed her shoulder against the door, forcing it with all her strength. It resisted, then cracked open, a thin line of light spilling into the oppressive gloom. With a final push, she tumbled through, falling to the other side. But relief was short-lived. Eliza landed hard, feeling the sting of impact in her palms. She scrambled to her feet, ready to bolt, but what was this? She was back in the basement. The very place she had just escaped from. An unholy laughter erupted behind her as the door swung shut and sealed itself away. "Now you're one of us." A new wave of terror surged as Eliza shook her head in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Before she could process reality, the laughter transformed, distorting into guttural howls, mocking her rebellion. Rage and fear filled her veins. "I want to join you!" she screamed, words lashing back like a whip. But the air thickened again, and amidst the chaos, she felt a sharp tug on her hair. With a jolt, she turned, and her eyes widened in horror. The child who had been just a shadow was now right in front of her, thin but with a ghastly grin stretching too wide for their face. "We will play, you just don't know the rules yet." An icy wave of dread washed over her. What were the rules? They unfolded slowly in her mind like an ominous quilt. As they closed in, Eliza realized the truth. She was not just facing these spirits, she was meant to join them, to become part of this twisted game forever. Eliza's breath caught in her throat as the otherworldly chill enveloped her. Then a voice broke through the cacophony, sharp and demanding. "Will you play, Eliza? Or will you find yourself lost, wandering the basement for eternity?" The distorted laughter echoed threateningly, and she felt a twisted desperation swell within her. Fate. Hanging by a thread. With the finality of a hammer hitting the nail, Eliza understood she had an even darker choice to make. What choice would she make? Would she succumb to the shadows or ignite a fire within herself strong enough to fight back? Eliza's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic rhythm that nearly drowned out the taunts of the shadows surrounding her. She could feel their eyes piercing through her, searching for any weakness. Staring into their hollow, joyless faces, she realized she was no longer in control. She had entered their realm, a warped playground of nightmares. "What are the rules?" she pressed, her voice trembling yet defiant. The child, still grinning that impossible grin, tilted their head as if considering her earnestness. "You must play to win, Eliza. If you lose, you will be ours forever." The laughter swirled around her, cold and cutting, as if the very shadows were enjoying her fear. She glanced around. The dim basement was no longer just a place of escape, it was a throne of despair. She could almost see the walls pulsating with the heartbeat of hidden terrors. "Why? Why me?" she gasped, the question clawing at her throat. "Because you've always been afraid. Fear makes the game more fun." They danced closer, skirting the edges of the faint light still spilling from the door. "You give us strength. Will you play, or will you be just another shadow?" Eliza's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Fragments of childhood games flickered in her thoughts, twisted memories tainted by the urgency of her plight. She remembered the joy of escaping mazes, the satisfaction of outsmarting the darkness. What is the game? Hide and seek. The child's laughter tumbled through the air, laced with malice. "Okay, I'll play," Eliza heard herself announce. A hush fell over the others. The shadows turned to her, their amusement tangible as they leaned in, waiting for her to define the terms. "Okay. 10 seconds to count, then I seek." As she closed her eyes, a part of her wondered if she had just made a terrible mistake. The counting began, and she could feel the weight of their hungry stares. 1, 2, 3. Panic swelled as she stole a glance, a folly she instantly regretted. In that instant, she saw them dart into the corners of the basement, their movements quick and disorderly like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. She pushed the fear aside and began her search. "Ready or not, here I come." The first place she looked was beneath the staircase. Empty. Just dust and old cobwebs. Her fingers trembled as they brushed against the cold, crumbling wood. She moved deeper into the darkness, heart pounding, forcing herself to suppress the rising dread, whispering that she was being watched, followed. Not hiding very well, Eliza called out, trying to stitch confidence into her voice. The laughter echoed back at her, only this time it was distorted, layered with something darker. Eliza's stomach twisted. A chill wrapped around her waist, and she whirled around to find a shadowy figure closing in, just beyond the light. Found you! It was the ghastly child, eyes burning like coals. But you haven't found the others, have you? What do you mean? They're hiding. The child hissed, fingers pointing to sudden dark corners she hadn't noticed before. And if you don't find them, you lose. Desperation clawed at her throat. Eliza took off toward the nearest corner. Still counting, I'll give you a hint, she shouted. But her words fell into a bottomless pit, no reply echoing back. Every shadow now felt wilder, more chaotic. What was happening to her? The panic grew. She turned to a larger shadow looming in the corner, heart racing. I know you're here. Show yourself. But instead of light, the laughter swelled, deeper and darker. Time's almost up, Eliza, each word dripped with malice, enunciated with an agonizing clarity. She turned, knowing she was losing and captured in the very game designed to entrap her. Choose. The voice boomed from every direction. Join us and be free, or linger on the edge, forever alone. The shadows danced around her, closing in. Eliza's breath hitched, realization dawning harshly. It was no longer about winning a choice between darkness and the flickering light of hope. Fighting that chill creeping down her spine, she understood that sometimes the rules demanded more than mere evasion. Would she turn against the very darkness that threatened to consume her? And in that moment of clarity, she found the faintest glimmer of resolve swelling within her. Let us see who really wins this game. As she took her first confident step forward, the laughter became a haunting wail, almost pleading. What would she discover as the shadows gave way? The basement trembled. Reality itself seemed to quake around her. Eliza didn't know the path ahead, but she felt something emerge deep inside, a fiery flicker refusing to be crushed by fear. Will you play by my rules now? She spat defiantly. But as her words echoed, the shadows recoiled in a frenzy, and she felt the pull of something ancient and powerful rise beneath her feet. What would emerge from the shadows when she finally took control of the game? What lay on the other side of the threshold of fear? The shadows stirred with an unsettling fury, a collective shudder that reverberated through the basement. Eliza clenched her fists, a mixture of terror and defiance flooding her veins. The darkness shrieked, bending to her will for the briefest moment before plunging into chaos. What are you? She demanded, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. The laughter turned sharp, as if the darkness was mocking her demand. Just like you, it hissed, swirling around her. We thrive on fear. We live in your nightmares. You think you can control us? Eliza felt a wave of fury surge inside, hotter than any flames. She had felt like a victim for too long. I don't fear you. You're nothing but shadows. The shadows hissed in anger, twisting into gargantuan shapes that loomed over her. They slithered closer, smirking with wide, gaping mouths. Shadows are formed by the light, little one. And you, dear Eliza, are the light we crave. Their grotesque faces were inches from her own now, the stench of decay palpable, overwhelming. She fought the urge to scream, to recoil from their breath curling around her. Instead, she took a deep breath, grounding herself. If you want to play, she challenged, then let us play. The shadows paused, momentarily intrigued. Very well. The stakes are higher now. But one misstep. The child's grin widened, revealing sharp, glistening teeth. And you want to just lose the game. You'll lose yourself. Eliza felt ice pull in her gut, but she pushed it away. Then tell me, what's my first move? The laughter turned to a low rumble of thunder. Suddenly, the cellar walls shifted, twisting like a funhouse mirage, and all at once, she was no longer in the old basement, but in an expansive arena filled with fog, dotted with glowing orbs that floated ominously. You have 1 hour to find the keys scattered throughout this labyrinth, The ghastly child called, a distant echo among the ethereal gloom. Should you fail, we will take your fear, and your soul shall remain here forever. The shadows flitted away abruptly, dispersing into the fog with malicious delight. Eliza scanned her surroundings, spotting the first key hanging from a thorny branch that emerged from the ground like a twisted tree. She hesitated, sensing the danger wrapped around it like a snake poised to strike. With a determined breath, Eliza approached, each step heavy but purposeful. The air thickened, filled with an oppressive darkness that stung her skin. She couldn't show any sign of weakness. She knew they were watching. As she reached for the key, a horrifying giggle erupted from the shadows behind her. Hurry, time is running out. Panic squeezed her heart again. She snatched the key, its cold metal biting into her palm. But as she turned, the ground beneath her shifted, an abyss yawning open, threatening to swallow her whole. Her feet stumbled, and she barely regained her balance. The ground vibrated, with echoes of laughter betraying the shadows' glee. Choose wisely. Their taunts twisted through her head like barbed wire. So many paths, but only the right one will lead you out. Eliza's pulse raced. With each key, would she get closer to freedom or deeper into despair? She was left with questions flooding her mind like surging tides. Who had bound her to this wretched game? What more was at stake? Do you think you know fear, Eliza? The child's voice rang out from the darkness, teasingly. Wait until it finds you in your most vulnerable moments. Eliza shook her head to clear the growing fog of dread. No more hesitation. If this was a game of shadows, she would play it on her terms. Every key, every choice, would it bring her closer to the light or plunge her further into the darkness? Just as Eliza made her next move toward a path shrouded in dense mist, a scream shattered the silence. A scream that echoed her own name, urging her back, hauntingly familiar. Eliza froze. It was a voice she knew well, a voice from her past. Her heart stuttered as realization settled in. Mom? The shadows exhaled like a beast unchained. Welcome to your deepest fears, Eliza. What lay hidden in the depths of her terror? Would she save her mother or doom them both to eternal night? Mom? Her voice trembled, caught between disbelief and desperation. The once menacing arena shifted, the thick fog swirling as if influenced by her turmoil. The shadows paused, their laughter temporarily silenced by the raw emotion hanging in the air. Mom! She called again, louder this time, striving to break free from the grip of terror. The darkness thickened around her, almost suffocating, as if it thrived on her fear. But she pressed forward, stepping toward the familiar cry. Come back to me, Eliza! The voice trembled, layered with both anguish and love, yet tinged with something darker. You have to find me before they take you. Eliza's heart thundered in her chest. The urgency in her mother's voice ignited a flurry of memories, warm hugs, comforting kisses, the sound of her laughter that had long since been snatched away. But doubts crept in, slinking through her mind like the shadows they deconjured. Was this really her mother? Or just another trick of the darkness? Find the keys, Eliza! The spectral voice echoed through the fog, the urgency clawing at her insides. You only have 1 hour. Remember the deal. With each heartbeat, time ticked away. The prickling sensation at the back of her neck intensified. Was she being watched? The shadows loomed, waiting, eager for her misstep. Focus, she whispered to herself, swallowing the rising fear. Eliza turned her back on the direction of her mother's voice and scanned the labyrinthine paths beneath the dim light of the glowing orbs. Strings of wind rustled through the thick fog, carrying faint whispers that danced mockingly against her as if the shadows conspired against her will. They were counting on her distraction. She refused to give in. There, to the right, a glint caught her eye, another key, suspended from a broken branch that wept with sharp thorns. Each step towards it felt like wading through treacle, the shadows swirling hungrily around her. As she reached for the key, the cackling erupted around her like bats disturbed from their roost. Foolish girl! Do you think that's really a key? She hesitated, the laughter disorienting. But a pulse of courage pushed her on. Clenching her teeth, she snatched the key, the cold bite igniting a spark of determination within. "I'll show you what light can do!" she shouted, brandishing the key like a weapon. The shadows recoiled, their forms flickering, but the laughter rose again, twisting into a cacophony of despair. "Just another step, Eliza. Just another game." Ignoring the taunts, she swiveled to face the maze once more. With increased resolve, she charged down another path, dark tendrils whipping at her heels. Each step felt like stumbling through quicksand. They wanted her fear, she wouldn't give it. "Mom, I'm coming!" she shouted, her voice cracking. But the faint echoing of her mother's pleas grew fainter and fainter, swallowed by the mist. A sickening dread pooled in her stomach. What if she was too late? The mist closed in, thick and heavy, blinding her. And then, a violent rumble tore through the air, crashing with an agonizing roar. The ground quaked beneath her feet as if the labyrinth itself trembled in anticipation. "Time's almost up!" The child's voice thundered, layered with chaos that sent chills spiraling down her spine. "2 keys down, but you need 6 more before the hour falls." Despair clawed at her heart, breath quickening as she darted down a new path. The laughter grew more frantic, shadows shifting and swirling, ready to pounce on her vulnerability. An interlude of glimmering light caught her eye further ahead, another chance. Without thinking, she lunged toward it, but just as her fingers brushed against it, the ground opened beneath her, plunging her into darkness. As she fell, time stopped, and with it, the shadows ceased their maniacal laughter. "What awaits you now, Eliza?" Suddenly, freezing darkness enveloped her, consuming all light and echoes of hope, echoing empty silence. Was this her end? "What if I don't make it?" she whispered into the abyss, her own words returning to her, eerily empty. In that darkness, a soft, trembling voice broke the silence once more, familiar yet distorted. "Eliza, you have to choose." The abyss pulsed, the desire to know clawing at her heart. Who made her choose? The shadows? Choose wisely, Eliza. Or be lost forever. What awaited her on the other side of the choice? What threads of fate enveloped her in unbreakable chains of fear? With a sudden jolt, the darkness erupted into a blinding flash, illuminating a warped landscape that twisted reality. Eliza found herself standing on a narrow pathway lined with shimmering stones that pulsed, similar to her racing heart. The air was heavy, thick with an impatient energy, and the muffled sounds of her surroundings created a haunting symphony of whispers and cries. "Choose," the voice echoed ominously, floating through the air like a ghost woven into the fabric of her mind. But every choice has its price. Turning slowly, she found herself at a crossroad with 3 paths stretching out before her. Each seemed to call her name, vibrating with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The left path twisted into a dense tangle of darkness, tendrils curling like snakes ready to strike. The middle path glowed softly, illuminating fragments of her childhood images of her mother smiling, but the shadows flickered in the edges, darkening the innocence. The right path shimmered like a mirage, but the air surrounding it felt charged, holding back an unseen terror beneath its surface. "What do I do?" Eliza screamed into the void. "Is this really my choice?" The whispering grew louder, layering over each other like a cacophony of lost souls. Some voices screamed their warnings, while others cooed sweet nothings, tugging at her memories, reminding her of warmth and safety. Panic squeezed her chest. Which path held the truth? Was she even capable of making the right choice? "Go left!" a voice shrieked, the anxiety clawing at her. "No! Go right! You'll die otherwise!" Another voice chimed in, sounding eerily familiar. Eliza clutched her head, the noise overwhelming her senses. Everything felt alive and yet horrifyingly dead at once. The stones began to tremble under her feet, and she felt the ground shift as if the very earth was plotting against her. Paralyzed by fear, she needed to make a choice. Time was slipping away. "Choose!" The voice rang out again, sharper, more urgent. "Choose wisely!" Hard hammering, she stepped toward the middle path, the images of her mother pushing her forward. But as she crossed into the light, an icy grip wrapped around her ankle, a shadow. The laughter erupted again, full of malice. Did you think it would be that easy? They jeered, the laughter echoing, multiplying in the echoing void. She stumbled, yanking her foot free with a fierce determination, but the shadows were relentless. They snatched at her clothes, tugging her back toward the darkness, wanting her despair. "Mom!" Eliza screamed, feeling the coldness creeping in, crawling up her spine like an insect. In her mind's eye, she saw her mother's face again, clearer than before. "You have to choose what you love, Eliza. That will protect you." The shadows roiled around her, rage and fury igniting their laughter. They were furious, desperate to drag her down. Clenching the key tightly, she thought of her mother, of hope, love, and the light that had once enveloped her. "Enough!" she shouted defiantly, taking another step deeper into the light. But a sudden pain shot through her leg like fire. Something had bitten her. She fell to the ground, wrestling with the shadows that entwined her tightly, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Time was slipping by, the countdown loud and insistent, but she fought against their grip, rippling memories flashing through her mind. "I choose what I love," she gasped, and in an act of desperation, she thrust the key forward, letting her determination pour into it. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agony as the light from the key grew, illuminating the depths of the darkness around her. For a moment, the mist lifted, the laughter faltered. But then, just as she thought she'd found the strength to break free, a new voice slithered into her ears, slow, sultry, and hinting at something darkly seductive. "Choose again, Eliza. Choose or lose everything." And with that, the cacophony surged back to life, a whirlwind of chaos. It surrounded her like a storm, ready to engulf her. What lay ahead? Would she keep her heart, her memories, or would the shadows take her entirely? The pulsating light flickered dangerously, and she felt the ground begin to crumble beneath her. "Choose!" The shadows shrieked, the darkness clawing at her once more. How much time remained? Would she make the right decision before the hourglass ran out? Eliza's breath came fast and shallow as the shadows swarmed closer, their whispers turning into deafening screams that gnawed at her mind. The ground trembled beneath her, the stones vibrating with a pulse that matched the frantic beating of her heart, as if the very path was alive. She felt sweat trickle down her brow, mixing with the cold fear that gripped her. Time was running out. "Choose!" The voice echoed again, a sinister demand that shook her to the core. The shadows lunged, their dark forms a swirling mass of dread, clawing at her, each reaching hand sending waves of terror rippling through her. Somewhere deep within her, a flicker of defiance ignited. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't. The painful bite on her leg sparked a surge of adrenaline. Shouting above the growing cacophony, Eliza yelled, "I choose love! I choose my mother!" The words seemed to slice through the screams for a brief instant, the shadows pulling back as if stung. But the pause was short-lived. The sinister voice returned, sounding almost amused. "Ah, but love is not without its costs, my dear." The laughter that followed was chilling, reverberating through the very air around her. Eliza staggered but stood firm, clutching the key tightly, its warm glow a beacon of hope amidst the consuming darkness. "What do I have to lose?" she shouted defiantly, her voice trembling but resolute. "Everything. And nothing you can imagine. Are you ready to pay the price of your choice?" The ground split again, a chasm opening at her feet, revealing utter blackness below. She could hear wails and cries from within, beckoning her closer. It was a terrifying abyss that promised nothing but despair. Heart racing in her chest, she shot a frantic look down each of the three paths. The left beckoned with slithering tendrils, the middle radiated warmth that threatened to turn cold, and the right was an unfathomable shimmer, dripping with a sweetness that felt wrong. "Choose!" The shadows lunged again, biting at her feet, but she was ready. She swung the key in front of her, unleashing the memory of love, of her mother's embrace, every precious moment crashing back in vivid waves. The shadows hesitated again, the laughter faltering. Eliza felt their grip weaken, just for a heartbeat. That heartbeat surged with power, and she took her chance, stepping toward the bright right path. I choose this! She screamed, a declaration as much as a plea for survival. But her foot slipped as tendrils shot from the depths of the chasm, snagging her ankle. Panic flooded her veins, and she could feel herself being dragged back toward the darkness. No! She gasped, desperately pulling against the force. Choose, Eliza! The voices howled, no longer individual but a horrific chorus. This will be the last time. She braced herself against the pull, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm not afraid! She screamed, trying to infuse her words with conviction. With a sudden surge of will, she slammed the key down onto the ground, and light erupted from it, bright enough to pierce the creeping shadows. But then came silence. The air stilled as the shadows shrank back, and for a brief moment, hope bloomed. Ah, but are you sure? Whispered the sultry voice, wrapping itself around her like a velvet glove. What if your love is not enough? What if it is this path that leads to salvation or your doom? The shimmering lights flickered again, and despair clutched at her heart. Was she torn between love and fear even now? Eliza hesitated, the echoes of the dead weighing heavily in the air. Something deep within cautioned her. What was the true cost? And then the ground beneath her shook violently, a warning that she had only moments left to decide. Choose! The shadows shrieked, the urgency thick in their voices. What path would she take now? Would she trust in the light, the memory of love, or surrender to the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole? The stone beneath her trembled, and she could feel the darkness rising up again. In the chaos of her thoughts, she knew one simple truth: she couldn't afford to lose everything. As the shadows frantically clawed at her, one thought crystallized in her mind: could she bear the consequences of her choice if it meant escaping this hell? What lay ahead was uncertain, and the consequences loomed ever closer. Would she embrace the light, or would the darkness finally claim its prize? The countdown was on. Eliza's pulse raced like a race car on a track, every second amplifying the tormenting whispers from the shadows. Choose! They screamed, voices merging into a single, chaotic melody that echoed against her skull. Fear tried to creep back in, but she pushed it down, focusing on the flicker of warmth in her heart. I choose love! She shouted, feeling the power of her words surge through her. The key glowed bright, illuminating the darkness around her like a lighthouse guiding a lost ship. The shadows recoiled as if burned, their twisted forms writhing at the edges of light. Ah, but love requires sacrifice. The sultry voice rang out, dripping with smugness now. Are you ready to pay the cost? The ground trembled again, but Eliza felt the heat from the light in her grasp overpowering the cold. She took a deep breath, letting the warmth steady her trembling body. This was her moment. Whatever the price, I'm ready. Her voice rang with determination, slicing through the chaos as she held the key aloft. With each word, the shadows writhed in agony, hesitation flickering across their forms. I want to let go of what matters most. Every muscle tensed as the tremors escalated beneath her. Beneath her feet, a fissure opened, revealing an ocean of darkness, but she remained anchored in the light. With resolve, she stepped forward, not back, and shouted, I choose to face my fears. I choose my mother. For a moment, everything halted. The shadows froze, their reactions morphing into an unsettling stillness. Then, without warning, the darkness erupted in a violent fury, spiraling around her in a storm. Fool! They hissed, shrieking in unison. You will pay! Eliza felt the air growing thick, suffocating her as they closed in. She could taste her fear, salty and bitter, but she refused to back down. No! I will not be your prisoner! Summoning every ounce of courage, she thrust the key forward, a bright beacon cutting through the storm. You are nothing but darkness. I am light. And then, a brilliant flash exploded from the key, radiating across the void. The anguished shrieks turned to a primal roar that shook the fabric of shadowy reality. The laughter went silent, swallowed by the light cascading around her, melting away the malicious tendrils as they shrank back into the darkness. In that blinding brightness, a doorway materialized like a beacon from a dream. Eliza's heart fluttered as she rushed toward it, the shadows dissipating with each step she took. She could see her mother smiling, warm, unreachable but close enough to feel. "Mom!" she cried out, racing forward. But just before she reached the threshold, she felt a chill wrap around her ankle, the last lingering touch of despair. "Don't go!" shrieked the shadows, their voices desperate now. But Eliza was resolute, pulling free from their grasp. "I'm not yours! I was never yours!" she shouted, breaking free. The moment she crossed into the light, everything shifted, the darkness fell away, and she was engulfed in warmth. Eliza lunged through the doorway, tumbling into her childhood living room, heart racing. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the space where she sat with her mother, laughter mingling in the air like music. "Mom?" The room was empty but filled with memories. She looked around, and there, tucked in a corner, was a photo of her and her mother from happier times. For the first time, the weight on her chest lifted, and a warmth enveloped her. "I found my way back," she whispered to the silence, feeling the spirit of her mother beside her like a protective embrace. "I'll carry you with me." Days turned into weeks as Eliza embraced life. The shadows lingered at the back of her mind, whispers fading with time, their power diminished. She learned to cherish each moment, to love fiercely, stepping into new adventures with courage. But every so often, when night fell and the winds howled, she remembered her battle with darkness with a knowledge that light can bend, but never completely fade. She held her head high, knowing she had faced her fears. And she was free. You've reached the thrilling conclusion of Eliza's story. But don't let the adventure end here. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and keep the stories coming. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions, theories about Eliza's journey, and what you think could happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Grab your crew and let them experience the next spine-chilling tale. Your engagement makes all the difference.